Hey guys, tonight we journey somewhere hot, scorchingly sleep sweat-inducingly hot. You're standing under the amber sun of ancient Persia, surrounded by golden dunes and distant cypress trees, as dry wind brushes your cheeks like a baker's oven left open too long. You can almost hear the sand shifting lazily across the stones. The air tastes like dust and almonds. And yet, somewhere nearby, hidden behind thick adobe walls and mysterious domes, someone is spooning icy dessert into a silver bowl. That's right, ice cream. In a desert. Long before refrigerators, freezers, or chill being a personality trait. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Always love reading those. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle your sandals through warm, sun-baked dust. The sun is dipping low, but there's no real cool here, just slightly less blistering. You're in a Persian city sometime around 500 BCE, maybe Susa or Yazd or somewhere in between. You're a bit thirsty, a bit cranky, and you're definitely not expecting a frozen treat to pop into this picture. I mean, it's the ancient world. You're probably bracing for goat stew and warm water stored in a leather pouch. But the Persians were different, exceptionally so. When they weren't ruling half the known world, carving royal roads across continents, or inventing bureaucracies that would make your local DMV weep with envy, they were chilling. Literally. They were figuring out how to preserve snow and ice in the middle of the desert and turning it into elegant treats laced with rose water and pistachio. It's the kind of innovation that makes your modern brain hurt just thinking about it. No electricity, no gas. Just stone, clay shadows and science. And let's be honest, if someone dropped you in the Iranian plateau right now and said, please construct an ice house using ancient tools, you'd last about 10 minutes before eating sand and sobbing. You pass a narrow alleyway, all shaded bricks and dappled sunlight, and smell something sweet dates maybe, or some early attempt at sherbet, possibly cooling in ceramic bowls set in shallow pools. You remember reading somewhere that yak means ice and chal means pit. Which makes sense because if you're going to keep ice around here, you're going to need a really clever pit. That clever pit. It becomes the Persian yakchal, one of history's most improbable inventions, a conical domed structure rising from the sands like a stone beehive capable of preserving ice for months, even through the vicious summer. It's part freezer, part architectural flex, part community refrigerator, and fully baffling to every empire that came after. But before we get there, let's linger in the desert a bit longer. The climate here is dry, harsh, and basically a slow roast. In the summer, daily temperatures soar past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or 40 Celsius, if your brain defaults to metric like it should. And yet, even in this unforgiving place, winters could get surprisingly chilly, especially at higher altitudes. Snow in the mountains wasn't unusual. It just didn't usually survive long enough to see summer. Unless, of course, you were Persian, had a donkey or two, and knew the secret art of ice harvesting. You imagine the scene in the dark hours of early February, a crew of bundled workers sets out from a village heading toward the mountains. The snow is crusted and dense. The stars glimmer like gossip in the cold sky. They chip, carve, and load blocks of snow onto straw-lined wagons, moving as fast as possible before dawn. Some historians still argue whether these treks were organized by local governors or were just entrepreneurial villagers chasing the cool. Either way, they bring back the goods, fragile, precious, and already melting. The race is on. If they're lucky, the snow makes it back to the outskirts of the village, where a yakchal awaits a squat, wide-brimmed dome with impossibly thick walls and a mysterious little door at the base. Inside, cool shadows, clever ventilation shafts, and a sunken pit dug deep into the ground. The snow is packed tightly between layers of insulating straw. And just like that, you've got summer ice in waiting. Historians still debate how common this practice really was. Some believe only royal courts and wealthy cities had the resources to build and maintain yakchals. Others argue that they were more widespread, almost like community freezers in desert towns. Either way, one thing's clear. Ancient Persia mastered the art of cool centuries before anyone else thought to try. You feel the dry air cling to your skin, still warm despite the setting sun. Somewhere behind you, laughter rises from a courtyard, the sound of a wooden bowl clinking on stone. Maybe someone's about to enjoy a little Faluda Persia's icy noodle dessert made with rice starch and infused with lime and rose water. And you're just getting started. There's a whole chilled empire to explore. You duck beneath an archway, brush your fingers across sun-warmed mud brick, and feel the temperature shift as you step into the shade. It's not exactly cold, but it's cooler. Just enough for your overheated brain to imagine how it might feel if the walls themselves could trap winter. Which, weirdly, they kinda do. The walls around you, 5 feet thick, made of a mixture of clay, sand, egg whites, goat hair, and ash, are the secret, or at least the start of it. The Persian yakchal wasn't just a fancy dome slapped over a hole. It was thermal engineering in a turbine. You walk slowly around its base, noticing how the structure narrows as it rises, like a party hat designed by a mathematician. That shape isn't aesthetic, it's science. The cone encourages hot air to rise and vent out the top, while cooler air stays low and calm. Your sandals crunch softly on pebbles as you move along the perimeter. You run your fingers along the plaster, a polished, lime-based mixture so tough and water-resistant it's still clinging to some yakchals over 2,000 years later. Imagine trying to build something that lasts longer than most countries just to keep your dessert from melting. Respect. Inside the dome, it's dark and still. You duck your head and step into the entrance, your eyes adjusting to the dim. The air smells of dust and earth with a faint hint of damp straw, and something else, maybe dates or maybe your imagination. You notice a pit in the center, sunken several feet into the ground. This is where the ice is stored, nestled under thick layers of straw like a shivering sheep. Even now in the off-season, the floor feels cooler under your feet. This place isn't just for storage. It's a passive refrigeration machine. It works like a giant natural thermos using shade, airflow, evaporation, and insulation to beat the heat without a single watt of electricity. The wind catchers, or bad gears, mounted strategically around the yakchal funnel, the breeze downward cooling the air as it descends. Think of them as ancient AC units minus the irritating hum and the annual maintenance costs. Some yakchals were used year-round, not just for ice, but for preserving food fruits, dairy meat. Others were more seasonal quiet through spring and summer, only roaring to life in the frigid weeks of midwinter when the mountains gifted their snow. Historians still argue whether yakchals evolved independently from Babylonian cooling pits or if they borrowed the idea and simply perfected it. The truth, like most ancient tech, is a slushy swirl of speculation and awe. Now let's be honest. You a soft 21st century soul, with your AirPods and meal-prepped quinoa, probably wouldn't last 10 minutes trying to design a building with no modern tools, no CAD software, no electricity, and no chill. You'd draw a dome on a napkin, break down in tears, and end up Googling how to make ancient ice house before rage quitting into a heat stroke nap. The Persians. They just did it. Repeatedly. In multiple cities. With variations based on climate, geography, and available materials. You step out into the light again and notice something interesting: channels carved into the ground. Shallow stone-lined trenches that wind through the village like lazy veins. You follow one with your eyes and realize it's not just decorative. It's a qanat, a kind of ancient underground aqueduct designed to carry water from mountain springs down into arid settlements using only gravity. Qanats are still used today in parts of Iran and elsewhere. Some run for miles underground, tapping into aquifers and letting water flow gently and coolly to where it's needed without pumps, pipes, or power grids. And in winter, these channels could be diverted into shallow basins where water was left overnight to freeze. Come morning, ice was collected and stored in the yakchal. Imagine that. Your village doesn't just passively hope for cold weather, it builds a system to harvest it. Now picture the village kids barefoot and giggling, running out before sunrise to snap off icicles and help their elders haul them into storage. A kind of ancient winter sport, minus the snowboards and energy drinks. You watch a boy carry a basket of glistening chunks past you, grinning despite the sting of cold on his hands. He's helping his family get ready for summer. Or maybe for a wedding feast where some lucky bride will get to taste ice mixed with pomegranate syrup. You stop near a small courtyard where a woman is grinding something in a stone bowl. The air smells of rose petals and honey. She's making sharbat, a chilled, sweetened drink that Persians adored long before soda machines were a thing. Pour it over chipped ice, and you've got the 5th century BCE version of a slushy, less brain freeze, more poetry. There's something quietly astonishing about all this. Not just the ingenuity of the technology, but the philosophy behind it. Ancient Persia didn't treat dessert as a luxury for the elite. Ice and sharbat were shared at festivals, served at weddings offered to travelers. The ice was communal, often stored in public yakchals built by local governors or benefactors. A kind of civic coolness project. And still historians debate how widespread this really was. Some records hint that only major cities had access to enough snow labor and resources. Others argue that regional adaptations allowed even remote towns to build scaled-down versions using clay and stone. Either way, you stand there now slightly cooler, definitely more impressed watching the sun finally dip behind a distant ridge. The stars are just starting to prick the sky. And somewhere behind you, someone cracks open a yakchal door and lifts a silver tray, steam curling from a bowl of early ice cream, scented with saffron and studded with frozen grapes. Yeah, Persia knew how to party. You wake up early again. It's still dark, that fuzzy blue-gray of just before dawn, the air cool enough that your breath forms tiny clouds. You stretch your arms, listen to the faint sounds of pots clinking in nearby courtyards, and step into a world quietly preparing for ice. This morning, you're following the villagers out to the freezing pools, long, shallow basins carved into the earth outside the town's edge. They're perfectly placed to catch the coldest air, shielded from the sun by low earthen banks. The kind of place where silence feels sacred and every footstep crunches softly against frost. Water has been flowing into these basins all night, trickling from the mountain-fed qanats you saw earlier. Thin sheets of ice have already started to form across the surface, glassy and fragile, like sleeping dragonfly wings. The villagers move carefully, using wooden scrapers to gather the ice into wicker baskets lined with straw. This isn't your refrigerator's hard-packed cube kind of ice. It's light, brittle, crystalline. But stack enough of it and it does the trick. You kneel beside a boy who's brushing frost from the edge of the basin. He's maybe 10 already, up before dawn, grinning at the sharp bite of morning air. You'd be inside whining for coffee and a puffer jacket. He's out here saving dessert futures. Here's the wild part: this process repeats for days, sometimes weeks. Each night, water flows into the freezing pools. Each morning, villagers collect the fresh ice and stack it inside the yakchal, carefully layering it with straw to prevent melting and help airflow. Over time, the pit fills. Ice on ice on ice. A slow, deliberate act of preservation and patience. Historians still argue whether this system originated in central Iran or migrated westward from ancient China or the Indus Valley. Clues point everywhere, but what's clear is that Persia took the idea and made it a communal ritual, like ancient crowd-sourced refrigeration. One of the few times when too many cooks doesn't spoil the ice cream. As the sun creeps over the horizon, you feel the air shift slightly warmer, a whisper of day arriving. Most of the harvesting work will pause until the next nightfall. But today is special. You're invited to join a small caravan heading out of the village. They're delivering a few blocks of early winter ice to a nearby estate. Yes, it's a bit of a flex, but hey, who hasn't wanted to casually hand someone frozen water and say, "Enjoy this before it melts"? You follow the donkeys, their saddlebags lined with straw ice packed tightly inside. The road winds through sand-colored hills and groves of fig trees, the sun casting long shadows. One of the older men in the caravan hums softly a tune older than your Spotify playlists by several millennia. You ask what it means. He shrugs. Just something my grandfather's grandfather used to sing. 2 hours later, you arrive at the estate-high walls, lush gardens, and a shaded central courtyard where a copper basin already waits. The matron of the household appears elegant in pale linen and offers the caravan a tray of fresh dates and cooled rose water. She receives the ice like it's gold. Within minutes, servants are grating it into smaller shards and pouring sharbat over it, pomegranate mint, maybe a splash of sour orange. You sip a cup offered to you. It's floral tart, deeply refreshing, and honestly better than anything Starbucks can dream up. But here's the kicker. Ice wasn't just for drinking. You walk through the estate and see evidence of something else: chilled clay rooms used for storing fish milk and even medicine. In this dry desert climate, keeping things cool wasn't just a luxury, it was survival. There's a moment of wonder as you imagine a Persian physician carefully mixing herbal tonics and wrapping them in damp cloths cooled with ice. Or a baker using it to prevent certain ingredients from spoiling before they can be transformed into sticky sweet pastries. Ice touches every part of life like an invisible hand in the background. And yes, there were even ice-based rituals. Some religious festivals called for chilled wine or iced desserts as part of the ceremony. Imagine being part of a sun-baked desert crowd singing prayers and suddenly receiving a scoop of saffron ice scented with rose and cardamom. You're sweating through your robes, and then, bam, flavored snow. Blessings upon blessings. But not everyone agreed. Historians still argue whether ice was universally accepted across all of Persian society, or if certain religious leaders frowned upon its indulgence. Some ancient writings praise it as divine refreshment, others call it a sign of excess. A few dusty scrolls hint at debates over whether using mountain snow for parties was disrespectful to nature's gifts. You sip the last of your sharbat and feel the chill run down your throat. Whatever the controversy, it's clear ice held power not just physically, but socially and spiritually. As the sun reaches its peak, the caravan prepares to return. The donkeys now carry dried goods and a few ceramic jugs of fruit syrup barter for tomorrow's ice. You walk slowly behind them, listening to the gentle clop of hooves, the breeze rustling through acacia branches. By the time you return to the village, the freezing pools are being cleaned and prepped again. Tomorrow night, the ritual will resume. Ice doesn't gather itself after all. And in this dance between seasons, time and human hands, the Persians have found a way to bottle winter in the middle of the desert. As you pass the Yakchal once more, you spot a girl sitting cross-legged beside it, sketching the dome into the dirt with a stick. She adds tiny donkeys, stick people hauling ice, and little puffs of steam rising from imaginary bowls. You smile. She's drawing history one sleepy scoop at a time. You wake again, not to cold air this time, but to the soft rhythmic thud of feet and hooves like a quiet heartbeat echoing across sand. Another delivery caravan is setting out, but today, you're not following ice. You're following salt. No, this isn't a detour. It's a crucial part of the same icy puzzle. After all, what keeps that precious ice clean? What preserves the syrups, pickled lemons, and herbal medicines nestled alongside the ice blocks? Salt. A mineral so ordinary in your modern kitchen it barely gets a second glance, but here it's sacred measured, bartered like silver. You walk behind the caravan toward the distant salt pans, your sandals kicking up chalky dust. The sun is low, painting the desert with those burnt amber tones that make everything look like a slow-motion music video. The terrain shifts under your feet, drier, flatter, veined with cracks like an old clay pot. And then the white begins to appear. First a dusting, then full crystalline patches sparkling like ground-up stars. You've reached the salt fields. Villagers here use curved wooden rakes to scrape thin layers of salt from the surface. It's a harsh job. The sun reflecting off the salt is blinding, and even under cloth wraps, their skin shows signs of battle cracks, lines, sunburns in ancient patterns. They don't complain. Salt is life. Salt keeps ice alive. One worker gestures for you to try a rake. It's heavier than it looks, and within seconds, your arms feel like cooked noodles. You hand it back sheepish, and he laughs. City hands, he says, though you're not sure what city he means. Probably any place with air conditioning. Salt gathered here is packed into woven bags and transported alongside straw and clay. Some of it will end up in the yakchals, scattered in layers or mixed with ash to keep out insects and mold. Some is destined for the kitchens where it brines pickles or dries cheeses to be stored through the burning months. You wonder what ancient Persian cheese tasted like. Funky, smoky. Still better than the pre-sliced kind, but not all salt comes from the ground. Some, you're told, is drawn from deep underground brine wells. These are tapped using tall wooden levers and leather buckets, and in the soft twilight glow, the whole system looks less like engineering and more like a strange desert dance. Up comes the salty water, which is then poured into flat-drying pans where the sun does the rest. It's solar alchemy light turned into preservation. As you wander back toward the village, a boy catches up to you proudly, displaying a chunk of pink rock salt. He's just traded for a piece of copper jewelry. It's rough crystalline, beautiful enough to sell at a trendy wellness store. He licks it, shrugs, and pockets it like treasure. You remember when you were that age and thrilled by cool rocks. You wonder when you stopped being that version of yourself. Back home in the village, salt becomes something ritualistic. You're invited into a modest courtyard where an old woman is preparing food. She sprinkles salt, not just into her stew, but across the threshold of the house, into the corners of the room, and even over a baby's swaddled feet. Protection, she murmurs more to herself than to you. Historians still argue whether these rituals were rooted in Zoroastrian purity laws, or whether they predate even that relics from prehistorical folk beliefs. Either way, salt carries weight here, literal and spiritual. It wards off decay. It keeps the things you love edible, even sacred. The woman lets you stir the pot over the fire. It's lamb with dried plums and quince dusted with cinnamon and swimming in a broth so rich it practically sings. She ladles out a bowl and gestures for you to sit. You take a bite. The flavor is deep, salty, sweet, tangy, and grounding. You're tasting desert resilience. Across from you, a small clay jar sits nestled in a woven basket. She uncovers it, revealing soft white labneh strained yogurt, stored with a glistening pool of olive oil on top. She adds a pinch of salt and hands it to you with flatbread. It's cool. How turns out, it was buried near the edge of the yakchal, instant appetizer refrigeration circa 500 BCE. You finish the meal as dusk falls. The stars begin to punch through the velvet sky one by one. You lie back, stomach-full head, spinning with the practical poetry of all this. The earth and ice and salt all choreographed like an ancient opera just to keep a dollop of yogurt cold. There's a whisper in the wind, and for a moment you imagine the murmurs of 1,000 desert people through time, hauling ice-drying salt, preserving food, preserving memory. They never knew your name, and yet they built something for you, for everyone who came after. A legacy in every frosted bowl. You close your eyes and drift, letting the taste of salt linger a little longer on your tongue. By now, the patterns of the village are imprinted in your senses. Dawn chills, mid-morning bustle, the rhythm of water through kanats, and that faint crystalline scent near the yakchal, like ancient snow and dusty herbs. But today you're stepping out of the practical and into something stranger, more sacred. You're heading to a temple. Not for prayer exactly. You're chasing an idea that in ancient Persia, coolness was divine. Your walk takes you through winding alleys until the homes thin out and stone pathways stretch toward a sun-baked hill. At its base sits a squat, weathered structure, part shrine, part observatory, entirely otherworldly. You're ushered inside by a caretaker with a face as wrinkled as folded linen. He nods. Once, then vanishes behind a curtain. Inside, the air changes. It's several degrees cooler. You swear you can feel it in your teeth. The walls are thick, smooth, and angled in a way that seems intentional. As you move deeper, you realize this isn't just a holy place. It's a temperature-controlled space centuries before HVAC. Slits in the wall channel wind from the hills. Polished tiles beneath your feet retain the night's chill. A priestess draped in white linen with silver-threaded cuffs approaches silently and leads you to a basin at the center of the room. Inside, a shimmering pool of water, still and perfectly clear. Not for drinking, not for washing. It's a reflection pool positioned directly beneath an opening in the ceiling. The light above aligns just right for a few moments each day, casting a shaft of sunlight onto the water which refracts and dances on the walls like a celestial jellyfish. You're watching a clock made of cold and light. This temple is dedicated to Anahita, the ancient Persian goddess of water purity and fertility. Her worship predates Islam and even Zoroastrianism in some regions. To her, cold water wasn't just refreshing, it was sacred, symbolic of cosmic order. In the searing heat of the desert, a single cold drop felt like a divine kiss. You sit beside the pool, noticing small offerings left around its rim, slices of dried lime, sprigs of mint-polished river stones. An acolyte nearby chants in a soft rhythmic hum, almost a lullaby. He glances at you briefly and smiles. Cold brings clarity, he says. You nod, pretending you understand, though your brain is mostly full of questions and a growing desire for sorbet. Historians still argue whether these temples were explicitly designed to manipulate temperature or if their coolness was a fortunate side effect of good insulation and high desert winds. But based on what you're feeling right now, your skin goosebumped in June, you're betting on intention. And here's a strange tidbit: during major festivals, the temple stored not just water, but ice. Retrieved from yakchals miles away, the blocks were shaved and used in purification rituals. Sometimes priests would walk barefoot over crushed ice as a form of trial. Imagine your Sunday service involving a barefoot ice bath. You'd never complain about pews again. Leaving the temple, you're gifted a small clay vial sealed with wax. The priestess tells you it contains night water that sat open beneath the stars, believed to absorb celestial properties. It's slightly cooler than the air around you. Probably thanks to evaporative cooling, but hey, maybe there's a little moonbeam in there too. You return to the village through the bazaar where the market is winding down. Under a shaded canopy, a vendor offers you a cup of kaki shiren, a sweet mineral water infused with herbs and served chilled over scraped ice. It tastes like cucumber met mint at a mountain spa. You drink deeply, the cold trickling into your core like the memory of a snowstorm. A curious object catches your eye: an ancient icebox, smaller than a yakchal, made of wood and lined with clay and straw. A portable cold storage unit for nobles. It looks like the kind of thing that would sell for $500 at a designer home goods store now. The vendor lifts the lid and beams. Inside is a small bowl of Faluda translucent noodles made from rice starch soaked in rose water and served with semi-frozen syrup. You take a bite. It's icy, fragrant, unexpectedly chewy. You've basically found the 500 BCE version of a slushie. You wander past stalls of saffron, dried mulberries, and bundles of herbs used in both medicine and desserts. Ice, it turns out, touches everything from worship to snack time, from the sacred pool to your slightly sticky fingers. As twilight falls, the yakchal glows in the fading light dome, outlined in soft gold. You sit nearby, sipping the last of your drink, and think about how so much effort, labor, belief, ingenuity has gone into protecting a fleeting sensation. Cold. It's invisible, weightless. Here in this harsh desert world, it's been tamed and cherished like a fragile deity. And maybe that's the quiet miracle. Not the technology, not the rituals, but the simple fact that humans, thousands of years ago, looked at the heat, the sun, the endless stretch of sand, and chose to create cold anyway. Not just for survival, but for pleasure, for beauty, for dessert. You lean back against the dome's cool outer wall, eyes fluttering, breath slowing. The stars come out one by one, and all around you the desert night hums with the soft memory of snow. You wake to the rustling of sand and a far-off bleat, probably a goat, though in your foggy state it could just as easily be a time-traveling kazoo. The night is deep now, the kind of velvety dark that swallows shadows whole. And tonight you're going even deeper into royalty feasts and frozen extravagance. You're following a winding path toward a seasonal palace, not the grand gold-plated kind you see in movies. This one is subtle, almost hidden, low-slung with wide courtyards, designed not for display, but for survival in style. When you arrive, the gatekeeper nods once and gestures for you to slip in through an arched entry. You pass through a perfumed garden, fragrant with jasmine and basil, before stepping into a dining courtyard. It's midnight, but the party is just getting started. In the center of the space sits a long, low table covered in embroidered linen. Candlelight flickers across trays of dates, roasted nuts, pomegranates cracked open like treasure chests. Silver goblets clink gently filled with chilled sharbat, yes, cold drinks. It feels like you've walked into the dream of a very polite time traveler who decided ice was the most important invention of all. How? Because behind the palace, hidden behind latticework and shaded groves, there's a secret tunnel lined with stone packed with insulation and leading directly to a mini yakchal. Think of it like a walk-in freezer without the compressor. Ice is fetched in blocks, wrapped in wet linen, then brought into the kitchen and shaved by servants into delicate curls. And tonight's showstopper, a royal dessert whispered about for days ahead of the feast. The dish is unveiled with flair, a domed silver cloche, lifted to reveal shimmering strands of falude, this time topped with a drizzle of saffron syrup, crushed pistachios, and a single violet blossom. The prince gestures to you, yes you, and insists you try it first. No pressure, right? As the first spoonful hits your tongue, there's a cold shock that gives way to floral sweetness, then a hint of citrusy tang. It's like if a frozen noodle had a romance with a spring garden. You nod respectfully, earning a wink from the prince. Across the table, an elderly scholar chimes in. Historians still argue whether falude was first made in Shiraz or Susa, but it always tastes best with music. And yes, music plays. A soft, undulating melody floats in from the far side of the courtyard. A cedar player strums under an apricot tree, the notes as fragile as frost. You chew slowly, letting it all melt in rhythm. A servant leans in and offers a tiny porcelain cup. This, he whispers, is the emperor's ice wine. Made from semi-frozen grapes, this concoction was cooled with snow, packed into jars, then left in underground cellars. The taste is bold and slightly syrupy, like raisins who've made peace with winter. Fun fact. Some nobles believed that cold drinks improved clarity of thought and digestion, though others claimed too much cold made your humors sullen. You sip. Your humors seem just fine. Somewhere between your fourth helping of pomegranate sorbet and second bowl of date-studded snow pudding, you hear a story. An old tale passed around between bites and banter, King Darius. Yes, that Darius once challenged his cooks to present him with the coldest possible dish on the hottest day of the year. One unlucky chef tried serving melon on clay tiles cooled with vinegar. Another filled a copper bowl with sweetened milk and buried it in snow. But the winner, a concoction, served in a bowl of solid ice, flavored with crushed mint, and topped with flower petals frozen in clear honey. Darius reportedly wept with joy. Or maybe he just got brain freeze. The sources disagree. You step away from the table for a breath of air, walking toward the fountain in the center of the courtyard. Its water sparkles faintly under moonlight, and a few petals drift lazily across its surface. You dip your fingers in. Yes, it's cold. Somehow, miraculously still cold. Beneath the fountain, a cistern connects to a shaded aqueduct fed by canets that bring water from the distant mountains. A noblewoman in a green silk robe joins you. She tells you of an old tradition burying jars of milk and honey in snow at dawn, then retrieving them at sunset to make the perfect desert ice cream. Some recipes used buffalo milk. Others added rose petals or crushed cardamom pods. It wasn't just about taste. It was about balance. Coldness to counter heat, sweetness to temper spice joy to counter the grinding desert sun. She gives you a smile and disappears back into the music. You return to the table where a final treat awaits, a frozen rose petal set delicately atop a tiny clay plate. It's purely decorative, but you touch it anyway. It's real, soft, chilled just enough to feel like a secret kept safe for centuries. As the feast winds down, you're offered a parting gift, a scroll wrapped in silk. Inside, a handwritten recipe for a spiced melon sorbet, annotated with notes about snow density cooling times and how to serve it with candied almonds for maximum harmony. You tuck it into your sash like a treasure map. The candles dim, guests disperse, and you step back into the cool midnight air, stomach full and heart humming. Overhead, the stars blink lazily. You stretch bones, pleasantly heavy, and feel something rare, a full-body chill in the middle of the desert. Not the jarring kind, but the kind that makes you grateful. A little like waking up to snow on your birthday. And the best part, there's still more cold to come. You don't remember falling asleep, but somehow you're waking up in the back of a camel cart, rocking gently through the pre-dawn dark stars, winking overhead like they know something you don't. A soft wool blanket is tucked around you, and the cart's driver, a grizzled man with eyebrows like sleeping mice, gives you a slow, knowing nod. Almost there, he mutters. The mountains wait. You sit up, bleary but curious. The desert is falling away behind you. Ahead, the Zagros Mountains rise like frozen waves of earth, their peaks blushing faint pink in the first touch of light. Today, you're heading to where the ice was born, not made, not stored, but harvested, cut from nature herself, like slabs of crystal treasure. The cart halts at a modest encampment hugging the base of the foothills. You're given thick sandals, a leather skin of water, and a walking stick. No one says much because, honestly, what can you say when you're about to hike for ice? The climb is slow but steady. Air gets thinner and crisper. The dusty tang of the lowlands fades, replaced by pine rock and something metallic like the smell of old snow. You're not alone. Around you, a quiet caravan of workers moves in unison, some leading donkeys, others carrying woven baskets lined with straw and felt. These are the ice harvesters, unsung engineers of an empire. Every winter they ascended to the shaded slopes where snow packed itself into natural depressions and frozen spring water collected in alpine hollows. With picks made of bronze or steel, they carved the blocks by hand, shaping them into rectangular prisms, each about the size of a chunky microwave. The trick was to work quickly before the sun rose too high. Timing was everything. You finally crest a ridge, and there it is, a shimmering field of ancient snow pits, lined with stone and packed firm. Some are covered with thatch, others with animal hides weighted down with stones. A worker lifts one of the coverings, revealing a perfect slab of milky white ice beneath. It's cold enough that the edges haven't even started to sweat. You kneel beside one and touch the surface. It's harder than you expected, dry and chalky at the edges. A little like a memory that forgot how to melt. One of the men offers you a small shard. You pop it into your mouth because of course you do, and it's snow, yes, but also something more, a moment frozen months ago up here in silence and sky. Historians still argue whether the Persians developed this method independently or whether they adapted it from neighboring mountain tribes who'd been storing snow in caves for centuries. Either way, the practice became a ritual of its own. Entire families, generation after generation, dedicated their lives to the collection, packing, and transport of ice from the mountains to the cities. You help load one of the insulated baskets. It's lined with damp straw sheep's wool and a thick cotton cloth soaked in salt water, an old trick to slow melting. The packed ice is wrapped tight, tied shut, then placed gently on a donkey's back. The convoy begins to descend single file, moving like a snake of cold through the hot breath of day. One quirky detail, some high-ranking Persian officials were said to wear silver rings chilled in mountain ice, believing the metal absorbed clarity from the snow. During long council meetings, they'd press the cold rings to their temples or necks to stay alert. You try this with your water skin, it mostly just makes your ear cold, but it does feel weirdly satisfying. At a rest stop halfway down the mountain, you find a makeshift tent, where one of the elders is preparing a kind of snow tea infused with dried rose hips, cinnamon bark, and mint. It's served over crushed ice, sweetened with grape molasses. You sip slowly, letting the cold move through you like a polite ghost. Nearby, younger workers are laughing, pelting each other with snowballs that explode into steam under the growing heat. The elder tells you something else. Once the ice reached the towns, it wasn't just used for food. Physicians used it to cool fevers, compress wounds, and even numb areas for minor surgeries. Pain runs from cold, he says, tapping his temple, but wisdom that walks toward it. You can't help but imagine some poor patient lying on a woven mat while a medic with a bronze scalpel mutters, "Hold still while I apply the snow." Not exactly your idea of anesthesia, but hey, it's better than the alternative, which was screaming. As the caravan reaches the lower plains, the mood changes. The sun climbs, air thickens, the donkeys huff. People cover their heads and tighten their wrappings. The snow pits of the mountains already feel like a dream. But there in the center of the caravan, insulated and protected, rides the prize coldness preserved against the odds. Back at the edge of town, you help unload. Each basket is checked. Some ice is lost, of course, but much remains. Enough for temple rituals, noble feasts, and the occasional lucky commoner. You watch as a boy with soot-smudged cheeks gets handed a single cube by a smiling elder. He squeals, pops it in his mouth, and shivers with delight. For him, it's magic, not engineering, not thermodynamics, just frozen joy. You sit beneath a tamarisk tree, chewing the stem for its faint saltiness, and reflect this entire operation manpower animals risk timing all for a luxury that disappears on contact with warmth. It's profoundly human, really. To fight nature not with conquest, but with craft. To chase something fleeting and call the chase itself worthwhile. The wind picks up. A swirl of dust brushes your ankle. And just then you feel the faintest drip down your back. Someone's basket has sprung a leak. You grin, letting the cool trail slide between your shoulder blades. A desert gift melting into memory. You stretch your legs and follow the slushy trail back toward the heart of the city, where the ice carefully harvested, carried, and protected finds its final resting place. Well, temporary resting place. Welcome to the ice vaults of ancient Persia, where summer dared to visit but never stayed. You walk through a crumbling gate carved with lions and spirals, then down a narrow alley lined with clay buildings, each wall baked hard as brick toast under the blazing sun. But you're not stopping here. You duck into a quieter courtyard shaded by a lattice of grapevines and descend into what looks like an oversized inverted cone built entirely from mud bricks. The air changes instantly cooler, denser. Your steps echo. This is a yakshal, literally ice pit. You pause to whisper it. Yakchal. It sounds like a spell or a sneeze. Either way, this structure is pure architectural sorcery. Built centuries ago, these domed storage towers could keep ice solid in 100 degrees of heat, even without refrigeration. You step farther in and the temperature drops another few degrees. Your skin tingles, and not in a bad way. Here's how it works. The thick walls, sometimes over 2 meters wide at the base, are made from a special mortar called sarouge, a waterproof blend of clay sand, lime egg whites, and goat hair. Yeah, egg whites and goat hair. Historians still argue whether this combination was discovered through experimentation or just a happy kitchen accident involving angry goats and omelets gone wrong. Inside the space is massive, vaulted like a cathedral to chill. At the bottom lies a basin where blocks of ice, often packed with sawdust or straw, were carefully stacked. The top is vented with a small opening that allows hot air to escape and cold night air to sink in. Thermal convection, and probably a bit of magic. You run your hand along the curved inner wall. It's cool to the touch, dry, smooth in places, crumbling in others. Above you, sunlight filters faintly through the chimney shaft like a single beam from the gods. For a moment, you feel like you're inside a sand-colored spaceship parked underground, cooling its alien cargo. One fringe theory even suggests that some yakchals were designed using early principles of radiative cooling, a process where heat radiates out into the night sky faster than it's absorbed, allowing the interior to drop below ambient temperature. Historians still debate whether the ancient Persians understood this scientifically or just noticed it worked and kept doing it. Either way, the result was the same ice in the desert all year round. But it wasn't just about keeping things cold. These yakchals had social gravity. The neighborhoods around them often grew into bustling centers where food was stored, contracts were made, and gossip was served colder than the sorbet. Some even had separate chambers for rose water butter and herbal medicines. Imagine showing up at your local 7-Eleven and finding a pharmacy, a cafe, and a whispering ring of elders all in the freezer aisle. You watch as workers begin to unload the ice blocks from the caravan. Each is passed hand to hand down a human chain and gently placed into the pit. The blocks make a soft thunk as they land, nestling together like sleepy walruses. Then sawdust is layered on top, clean, fine, dry sawdust from date palms and cypress trees specially sifted and stored. Oddly enough, this sawdust is one of the reasons the ice lasts for months. It acts as an insulator and absorbs meltwater without freezing into unmanageable slush. Plus, it smells faintly sweet like forgotten firewood. A boy sidles up next to you with a broom twice his size. He's tasked with sweeping excess straw into the side vents. You nod at him. He nods back, solemn as a monk. Clearly, this is sacred work. In one corner, you see a group of elderly women making faluda, a sorbet-like dessert made with thin vermicelli noodles, rose water, and lime juice served over finely shaved ice. They're using tools passed down through generations: bronze graters, cedarwood bowls, and long-handled ladles carved with fish motifs. One hands you a scoop in a leaf bowl. You taste it. Cold, sweet, bright. The rose hits first soft and floral, then the lime sharp as a slap from a polite aunt. It's refreshing and ancient and a little confusing, but in the best way. As you sit to enjoy the treat, you overhear a spirited argument near the Yakchal's entry. A group of scholars, or maybe just enthusiastic uncles, are debating whether the use of Yakchals originated in the Achaemenid period or developed fully under the later Sassanids. It's clearly older than the columns at Persepolis, one insists. No, the Sassanids added the upper vents, another retorts. You smile. The truth is, the Yakchal has become timeless, woven into the fabric of Persian ingenuity. Nearby, a low wall features faded carvings, depictions of camels, snowflakes, and stylized Yakchal domes with little curls of wind above them. Someone has scrawled something in modern Persian. Below coolness is a kind of wisdom. You nod. That checks out. A little girl passes by, dragging a cart filled with empty clay jugs. She's taken them to be chilled so the water inside will stay crisp and refreshing for hours. Practical, yes. But it also feels a little like sending your dishes off to school. Everything here has purpose. Even the silence between footsteps. You finish your dessert and rise. A thin layer of cool dust clings to your back. The sun is still high burning like it always does, but the heat can't touch you here. Not in this place where ice lives longer than logic, where mud brick science makes summer bend the knee. And as you exit, blinking into the glare of daylight, you glance back over your shoulder. The Yakchal stands quiet and humble, its curved dome unbothered by the centuries. Still doing its job. Still hiding winter in the middle of fire. You walk away slowly, not because your legs are tired, but because it's hard to leave something that feels like a secret. Like you've just been let in on an ancient whisper between man and nature. The Yakchal disappears behind you, its domed back blending into the cityscape like a dune-shaped dream. The streets are busier now. Market stalls groan with dates, pomegranates, brassware, and spices so fragrant they hit you like polite little uppercuts. And somewhere between a melon vendor and a man selling carved dice, you see it, a roadside ice vendor shaded under a makeshift canopy of dyed fabric. He's slicing a massive block of mountain ice with a saw that looks older than regret. Children crowd around. Some clutch copper coins. Others trade scraps of cloth, a carved bead, or even a poem for a sliver of cold. One boy recites a few lines about the moon's jealousy of snow, and the vendor, clearly touched, hands him a wedge the size of a lemon. It's a trade older than capitalism, wonder for refreshment. The vendor sees you watching and beckons you over. He offers you a sliver sharp-edged, melting already. You take it and it's cool against your lips. You let it rest on your tongue, tasting mountain labor and legacy, all at once. It's not just frozen water. It's time held still for a moment. He nods at you. Yaki zendegi, he says with a grin. The ice of life. You nod back, not quite sure what to say. Because honestly, what do you say to someone handing you a piece of glacier in the middle of a desert bazaar? You wander a bit more, and as the sun begins to slide down the sky like honey off warm bread, you find yourself at the edge of a quiet garden. There's a shaded bench under a cypress tree, and for once, no one else is sitting there. You take the seat. The stone is cool, almost suspiciously cool. A quiet miracle. Maybe the garden keeper laid ice beneath it. Maybe the wind has a favorite place to rest. Maybe it's just your imagination. You close your eyes. The desert hums around you, cicadas' camel bells, the occasional bark of a distant dog. Somewhere, someone's singing a lullaby in a language that hasn't changed in 1,000 years. And you remember the ancient Persians didn't just fight heat. They didn't conquer it. They collaborated with it. They built systems to flow with the seasons, to turn nature's rhythms into comfort. They made the unbearable bearable not by magic, but by watching carefully, building cleverly, and respecting the cold like it was royalty. And all of this, every frozen cube, every shady dome, every sticky scoop of rosewater noodles, started with a simple truth, that even the hottest places on Earth crave a little chill. You smile. Not because the story is over, but because it isn't. The ice still melts. The snow still falls. Somewhere a child is tasting their first flake of it, wide-eyed and silent. Somewhere else an elder is teaching a younger one how to stack the blocks just right, how to layer the straw, how to angle the walls of the yakchal so the heat slips past like a polite guest. And somewhere, maybe even in your own modern city, a piece of ice clinks in a glass, and you think of ancient hands shaping snow into survival. The sun finally dips. The garden dims. A cool breeze brushes your cheek. You don't remember falling asleep, but this time when you do, you dream of ice, soft and slow and perfectly cold.